Welcome to Normalize the Conversation. I'm your host, Francesca Regular, and today I'm joined by therapist and founder of Thrope Therapy, Lily Thrope. In this episode, Lily breaks down eating disorders, challenging misconceptions about who they affect and what recovery truly looks like, especially when it means embracing a larger body. She also explores how societal conversations have shifted from body positivity to self-love being equated with weight loss. Lily, thank you so much for joining me today. Before we begin, I just want to check in. How are you really?
That's such a great question. I love that you start your podcast with that question. I'm feeling honestly stressed just about the state of our world and everything going on. And yeah, I'm trying to contain that stress to support other people as a therapist, but definitely feeling that of my own stress around it and then helping clients work through that too.
Oh, thank you for being so honest. I think there's this misconception that therapists aren't human and that we don't get stressed and we don't feel it and we can hold space all the time without it affecting us. And I'm learning that it does affect me sometimes. And I have to be very mindful that I'm caring for myself between sessions and just before and after to make sure that I'm also doing as okay as possible when so much is happening outside of our control and a little anxious about what's to happen.
Yeah, totally. I think as a therapist, I've been working as a therapist, I think, for like 8 years now. And I've really learned how to take the best care of myself so I can show up for my clients. And I think that's been kind of like a growing learning process of what is the best way to take care of yourself. And I think it's so individual, right? Like, I love that you go for your daily walks. I've been seeing that and so awesome. And, I'm a huge knitter. So, like, making sure I'm always working on a project is such a great way for me to take care of my mental health, but also having such supportive family and friends. I think that's been huge for me.
Yes. So my walks have been so helpful for me. I really rely on them. But having family and friends to talk to, nothing beats that. So this is so silly, but my mom is one of my best friends. And at 1:30, I know she's gonna be getting off work on the East Coast. So I find my friends to see when she leaves, just so I can talk to her as soon as she gets in the car and decompress my day. So far, it's only halfway through it, but decompress her day and just feel that validation in, yeah, we're both stressed and know that I just have someone to go through it with.
Yeah, totally. There's nothing more powerful than human connection. And I think you're describing that, like being able to just call your mom, tell her a few things about your day, have that feeling of connection between the two of you, I think is the most powerful healing tool. And it's exactly why therapy is so powerful. You're connecting with another human being. And for a lot of people, it's the first time they're really truly being vulnerable. I think being vulnerable is so scary to begin with, but therapists specifically provide a really safe, hopefully, are providing a really safe space to be vulnerable. So I'm glad you have your mom to talk to. And I think a lot of people talk to their mom daily for that, if possible. Obviously, mother-daughter relationships are a whole other topic. It can be very complicated too.
Yes, oh, we have our days, but that human connection is so important. And I remember the first time I found a therapist that I could really talk to and feel really understood me and validated me. And that was huge because it was the first time. I mean, this is so perfect for our conversation today. It was after my parents were separating, I decided to stop eating and use food as the one thing I could control because everything else felt like it was out of control. And that was the first time that therapist, she would take me on walks because I had this, I needed to keep moving. I needed to be exercising. So she would take me on walks and just talk to me about what I was feeling and why I was feeling that way. And having that connection made me be able to talk about this really intrusive thought that doesn't make sense now, but back then it did make sense that if I was skinny enough, my dad would come home. And having someone just validate that sometimes we use food as the sense of control, especially as a kid who blames themselves. And I just remember being able to, I mean, it took a long time after that for me to start eating again, but just having someone that I could say that to was huge.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing about your experience with that. I think having a therapist who creates comfort is so important. That's the most important thing, that comfort that if I share this, I'm not going to be abandoned and I'm going to be supported and I'm going to be taken care of. And I think often we feel untaken care of. Like in this example, you maybe didn't feel cared for by your dad. I'm sure he did care, but there's this feeling of, I want to be cared for in a specific way. I want him to stay. And by doing this other thing, I can get my needs met. And I think that really is the root of a lot of people's eating disorders, or really any, I don't want to say maladaptive, but maladaptive coping strategies. Let's just call them coping strategies, right? They're all just coping strategies. An eating disorder is a way to feel like you're getting your needs met. And often people have unmet emotional needs, and eating is the first thing that we think of that we are in control of or seem in control of and can change. And I mean, there's so many other layers, but just hearing that, I'm thinking about this like unmet emotional need that you had and how food became a resource to you to hopefully get that need met.
Yeah, exactly. And it came with the validation of people commenting that you look so good, right? So the more weight you lost, the more attention you were getting. And that became really difficult too because I wanted that validation. I wanted that attention that I wasn't getting from my parents at that time because they were going through something that was so deeply emotional for them that they didn't have that capacity for me. And I don't know why that was the intrusive thought I had and why it felt so good to feel so much, I guess, like exhaustion and pain toward myself.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to know exactly what little Fran was thinking, but I think it really makes a lot of sense why people stay in their eating disorders. And I think that's kind of what you're describing. There's the why we got into it, right? Something happened, maybe an unmet need. Maybe there was just, wanting to feel good, or it could be as simple as that. Not that that's simple, but I think then you're describing once you're in the eating disorder, if it's a restrictive eating disorder and you're losing weight, people are complimenting you constantly. And that creates this feedback loop in your head of what I'm doing is good. And it's the only version of, I want to call it self-harm. I think that's like maybe nuanced to talk about, but it's the only version of self-harm that people really congratulate. You're going to get a gold star for losing weight. You're going to get a gold star for starving yourself. You're going to get a gold star for over-exercising. And I still hear it today. Even with all the awareness and education we have around eating disorders, maybe it's just the world I'm in, there's still, I hear someone say, "Oh, I did X, Y, and Z," and someone else say, "Wow, you're so disciplined.
Yeah.
Wow, you look so great. What did you do?" How do you know that that person doesn't have an illness, whether it's an eating disorder or something else? There's still such a congratulatory energy around body changes. And I think you described exactly why someone would stay in it for so long.
Yeah, there is that congratulatory, and it's so hard. I fit the mold. That was the thing too, is I was this blonde, tiny high school cheerleader, and I just fit the mold of what an eating disorder looked like. And I think that's the hardest part for me to recognize. I got to the point where it was severe enough that people noticed and wanted to talk about, but other people don't get that if they don't fit the mold. So that makes me very frustrated because I did fit the mold and we saw it happening. And then eventually it got to the point where everyone was like, whoa, this is an eating disorder. You're anorexic. You need help. But a lot of people, they just don't see it. They don't recognize that, hey, this person is also struggling. And it could be not anorexia, it could be bulimia, it could be binge eating. There's so many different types. And we don't talk about it unless, or at least in my circle, we didn't talk about it unless it was the cheerleader who was starving herself and looked small enough in her uniform.
Yeah, I think what you're describing is really important. This idea that eating disorders are noticed in certain people and they're prescribed in other people. So people in larger bodies are often prescribed eating disorders, right? Their doctors are saying, hey, get on this diet, lose weight. This will solve your health issues. And they don't even screen them. Do they have an eating disorder already? Are they restricting? Are they maybe binging? Do they have this underlying emotional need that's not being met? And that's why the eating disorder exists in the first place. I think there's a big challenge around who is getting noticed and who is getting treatment. And I think you're describing that. Like, even for you, though, it did take a long time for it to get noticed because, like you said, it was typical, right? It was typical for your friends and maybe your other cheerleaders to all together focus on how can we be the smallest? How can we look the best in our uniforms? There probably wasn't any other voices questioning that or wondering why are we focusing on that or why is that important and helping you figure out really where your worth came from. I think there probably wasn't a lot of that alternative talking about bodies.
And that's the thing is whatever kind of spectrum you're on, there's not conversation that's healthy. And that's very concerning. And I think we've come a long way that maybe we're having more of these conversations and we're seeing it. But I don't know, it's just so disheartening that those are the ways that we approach it. And it's creating these unhealthy relationships with food that last very, very long time. And one thing that I wish was done, it was something that was done later for me in college and undergrad, my at the infirmary, the doctor noticed that I had patches of skin that were turning white and was running blood work and was like, your kidneys are starting to shut down. You need to eat. You are looking very skeletal. And she made me come back and get blood work every 3 weeks and see a nutritionist. I had to see a nutritionist once a week and go over what I was eating. And that was huge because I making sure that I knew what had protein, right? Knew how different vegetables might fuel me. Know that it was okay to eat bread and potatoes and pasta. But a lot of times people are told to lose weight or gain weight without any conversation on how to create a healthy relationship with food and with your body and how to nourish it in a way that doesn't cause you harm.
Yeah, I think you're describing the importance of an individualized approach, right? So if someone says to you, gain weight or lose weight, what are you going to do? You're going to Google it. I mean, maybe not back then, but you were going to Google it, right? And say, what does Google say? That's not important. That's not informed on your experience or your eating disorder. I think working with a dietitian who specializes in eating disorders, working with a therapist who specializes in eating disorders, you clearly got the support you needed, which was not only like the psychoeducation around the eating disorder and the behaviors, also the nutrition education, right? Like dietitians have that specific nutrition education to share with you, but actually dietitians can do a lot more than that. They can also work on, body image concerns, thoughts around food, food rules, so many aspects of food that come up. And something I've been seeing a lot, I work with a lot of teens and there's just so much misinformation online, as we know, right? There's TikTok, there's Instagram, there's Reels, there's everyone and their mother calling themselves a health coach because they happen to solve their issues or whatever with some special potion. And I think that's really scary for me as a therapist to see that people hear someone say one innocuous thing. They think it's innocuous. It's like, I'm not even going to say one of them because I don't want to promote it, but, any of the food rules you've heard of, I did this and it solved my gut issues, for example, that is going to harm people. You don't know their individual health picture. You don't know their labs. You don't know their history with eating disorders. You don't know their family history. This is why it's so important to work with an individualized team, a doctor, a dietitian, a psychiatrist, and a therapist so that you get the best help for your eating disorder.
Yes, because online there's so many harmful messages, like how many calories you should be eating in a day, or what your movement schedule should be, or what quick fix magic pills you should be taking, what powders you should be using. There's all of these things. And a lot of times, I think with New Year's too, we see an influx because all those marketing schemes telling us how we can look our best and feel our best. And it's so great if something works for you in a way that is healthy and that makes you feel good and fueled. I love that for you. Doesn't mean it's going to work for everyone else. And promoting stuff that may not be helpful and may be harmful, like very low calorie counts, is not, it's just not something we should be doing. And I hope we see a trend eventually that kind of stops.
Yeah, I think, online is such a special space in that you can connect with so many different people who have different experiences and hear their stories. It's exactly what we're doing today, right? Sharing about our experiences with mental health. But I think just because you experience something doesn't make you an expert on it. And lived experience is so valid. It's really important. It's so important in the work I do. I would not enjoy working with eating disorders as much as I do if I didn't have my own experience with it. At the same time, having gone through an eating disorder doesn't make me the expert on eating disorders. What helps you become an expert is working with clients, is taking training, is working with other dietitians and doctors who can educate you on the different aspects of eating disorders and how it impacts people. Like the way that your doctor knew what those skin patches were and what to test for. That's important knowledge that you don't get from just having had an eating disorder. So I think I really value lived experience, and I think it's a huge piece of the puzzle. But what I see happening online is someone saying, I did this one thing and it solved my issues. Let me help you do that one thing. Well, that one thing might not be the thing for that person and actually might exacerbate whatever symptoms they're experiencing.
Yes, exactly. And back to what you said before, that individualized approach, it really has to work for the individual. And that requires, I think for me, what that required was having a mental health professional and a medical doctor and a nutritionist and a trainer all working together and communicating with me and making sure I felt comfortable the entire time. Because if we were to just tell me exactly what I had to eat all the time and tell me what supplements I had to take and how many pills I needed to swallow a day and how much I needed to work out, I don't think I would have reacted well because I don't like to be told what to do. And because it feels overwhelming. So finding foods slowly to reintroduce to me, creating more conversations, creating workout routines that weren't, I had zero strength in my body. So if you told me to like run a mile a day or lift like 5 pounds, it wasn't going to happen. That was way too much for me. It was like 1 to 2 pounds and walking a little bit. It was slowly and it was making sure that are you feeling strong enough to be able to do this? Are you eating enough in a way that you don't feel like you're going to pass out or you're not passing out or you're not getting sick? Are you comfortable swallowing this many pills? Because some people aren't. And if you go from swallowing none to swallowing 10, it's different. So being able to really collaborate and have a voice while having a team of people who were very well trained in what they were doing and working together was just so important. And I can't create that for anyone. So if I was to go online or go to my clients and say, here's the solution, I would be so wrong because I don't have that training in every single aspect. And it took so many people in my corner to be able to make the smaller steps forward.
Yeah, I really love the idea of a team approach. And I think that's what you're describing is when you have this whole team that's coming together to be creative, to support you specifically, there's nothing like it. It's so refreshing to be able to have a team that is really taking into account all of your individual information and coming up with creative things that work with you, right? Therapists are meant to work with their clients, not for their clients or against their clients, just with them together, like holding hands, kind of walking down the path and figuring out a way to recover in a way that makes sense for them, whether it's like a slow harm reduction approach, right? That's important too. or it is more of a structured kind of DBT approach. There's so many different approaches you can take with an eating disorder. But it sounds like you had a really great team, which I think made a huge difference for you.
Yes, I was so lucky. And the best part was it was all covered by the school insurance.
Amazing.
Because a lot of times it's not very accessible. So then that leaves people to going online and going on, the younger generations are really going on social media. The older generations are using more Google that we're seeing, at least that's what I'm seeing. And when all this misinformation and when the SEOs and the algorithm are showing you all the wrong things, it is so difficult. So being able to put accurate information online, being able to have conversations like this, so important to counter all of the harmful or just not individualized approaches being shown to people.
Yeah, definitely. Fully agree.
Yeah. And I think there's this misconception on what recovery should look like and what your body should look like throughout all of it. Because a lot of people, I remember as my weight was going up, there was times where people were like, oh, it's the perfect weight. And then there was times people were like, oh, you're getting a little bigger. Are you sure you want to keep eating? Maybe we should take that food away. And recognizing that it's different for every single person and there's not a way that recovery is supposed to look.
Definitely. Yeah, I think recovering into a larger body is something that is super challenging because of what you just described, which is like there's this belief that people need to recover to a certain point and then they've recovered enough. Who is to say what is recovered enough? And different people's bodies respond differently to eating enough. And I think really the most important thing, I won't say most, but a very important thing in recovery is making sure that you're eating enough. And often people recover to a place where they're still restricting in some way or develop orthorexia, which is the pursuit of, ultimate health and continuing to follow strict and stringent rules and exercise plans to maintain a certain weight. And to me, really what recovery is being able to live in a way that you don't have to do anything rigid or intense to maintain your body. And for a lot of people, when they get to that place where they're not doing anything rigid, their body might look different than what society has decided is healthy. And I hate the word health and I hate the word healthy because I think it gets so misconstrued to mean the way someone looks or the way someone presents. Health is such an individual term. You have to define health for you. It's a combination, for me, it's a combination of mental, physical, emotional, and social, and that can look so different than someone else. I think the medical model of health is being without illness, which is such an unfair definition and doesn't mean anything to me personally. So I think there's a need to pull back and recognize what health is to you is not what health is to someone else, and having the space to determine again what your recovery looks like, what health looks like, what you feel is important to focus on and work towards versus this idea that there's some arbitrary health out there and we could all chase that and somehow we'll get to that mountain of health. If we just keep running and running and running towards something, we'll get it. I don't think health is like that. I don't think it comes from running towards something.
Yes, wait, I love that so much because also when society is determining and dictating what health looks like and what we should look like and feel like all the time, the trends change all the time, all the time. So, I mean, think about eyebrows, right? The thin eyebrows versus the thicker eyebrows, the like pulled up, the microbladed, whatever it is. Every aspect of what we should look like. I mean, our hairstyles, right? Our bodies, everything. Society is constantly changing to meet the standard of beauty. So if we are living this idea of health that's related to just how our body looks based on what society tells us we should look like, we're never going to get somewhere that makes us feel confident, comfortable, and happy because by the time we start to reach that mark, society's like 10 trends away.
Yeah, totally. And just this idea that you're going to receive inner peace from something outside you
Yeah.
is harmful, right? You're not going to receive inner peace from chasing the trends, from trying to be something that society or a partner or a parent want you to be. You're going to reach that, I think, by coming back to what you emotionally need and being able to take care of your emotional needs. And that comes back to what I was saying about eating disorders. Often there's an unmet emotional need. Same thing when you're chasing trends, right? Sometimes you just really like a trend. That's great. But if you are just chasing the trends to fit in or feel like you deserve to be treated a certain way, that's not where your worth comes from. Your worth comes from something deeper inside of you and not what you're doing or showing on the outside. And I think that is so hard to say with social media all around us, right? Likes and comments and who's doing what. And it has made it even harder to feel comfortable and confident in your own skin.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Yes. Those comments and likes online, so difficult. I can post something that's about my work and something I've worked very hard on, and then I'll get a comment that's like, oh, you're so cute. And I'm like, that's not relevant at all to what I was posting. And that's frustrating. And I think, but then my brain gets that like reassurance that, oh, I looked really cute like that. Now my hair always needs to look like that. And my makeup, I need to have this much makeup on all the time. Or I need to be dressed like this or pose like this. And I'm just disconnecting from myself. And when I'm constantly chasing this kind of pleasure of fitting in, of being good enough based on society's responses, I'm starting to hate the natural me more and more. That's very, very disheartening as someone who's has all this therapy, who's studying it, who's starting to work with clients, who has the knowledge of all the coping skills and tools and self-care practices that are working for me. I have all of these resource information, and yet a comment online can just change it all.
Yeah, I think even if you have all the strategies and you're a therapist, back to what we were saying earlier, being human is really hard.
Yeah.
And I think that's what you're describing. You're not immune to comments online. You're not immune to a person saying something that's so unrelated to something you were excited about sharing with complete strangers, right? That's another part of the internet that is really hard is we're sharing really vulnerably. And I've actually been thinking about this a lot. Just I feel like at least Instagram, I don't have TikTok and I really try to stay off of this. I really only have one social media platform. It feels to me like the vulnerability Olympics. I think there's something so valuable about how vulnerable people are online, but it feels like this vulnerability Olympics. Who can be the most vulnerable? Who can say the wildest thing to get people lured in? It feels in a way, I don't know, manipulative in that way. I don't know. I don't want to take away from the value that comes from people being vulnerable online, but sometimes it does feel like a comparison around who's the most vulnerable, who struggled the most, who has the hardest life. And I'm not sure how helpful that is.
Yeah, and how we take it in is so hard because then when we start comparing ourselves, we're like, well, their life seems so much harder. Their struggles were so much worse. How did I go through it in this way? And I think that's something I've really had to learn not to allow myself to get caught up in that. But you know what? To be honest, the last few days, I've really been going through those urges to not eat. And I don't know why. And I was talking to my dad today and I was like, you know what? I hate the way I look. I hate every single thing about myself. And he was like, okay, let's breathe. Where is that coming from? Maybe you need to take time to just relax today. It's a holiday, it's not a work day. Take time to just connect to yourself, get offline, delete the social media apps if you need to. Just get away from all of these intrusive thoughts in your head because you're great. You should love yourself. You deserve to love yourself. And I think that was the message I really needed to hear. because as soon as I'm online just a little too much, or I'm standing in the mirror just a little too much, I revert back to these I don't like myself. And when I don't like myself, I just stop wanting to fuel my body so that I feel as weak physically as I do emotionally.
Yeah, thank you again for sharing that. I feel like there's so much vulnerability in admitting like, hey, I'm struggling with this too. And I always say, even as an eating disorder therapist, I have a day where I'm like, oh, I just don't want to make breakfast. Oh, I just don't like the way I look today, right? Like that happens for everyone, but I think it's your response to it that really matters. So your response was to reach out to a supportive person in your life and hear their feedback. And I think your dad was able to talk to your eating disorder voice and kind of reassure it, like kind of like kindly fuck you, go away. But you deserve better and you deserve love and you deserve support even from yourself. We can't support ourselves 24/7. That's not possible. So I think the idea of having that supportive community to reach out to is so important. I think the other piece is that your eating disorder is still a part of you. And we can't just exile that part. We can't just be like, oh, never mind, that wasn't a part of me. It is. And sometimes it's going to rear its ugly head and we have to notice it. And I think you did a really good job of noticing that voice, saying that it's happening to someone else, providing accountability for yourself, and then also wondering why. Why is it here? I love asking parts of me like, why are you here today? Like, for example, if you're hungry, why are you here? Because you're hungry, eat something, right? Why is this feeling here that you aren't feeling good about yourself? Why is that coming up? Where is that coming from? And then I'd kind of, again, try to meet the needs of those parts. Maybe those parts are feeling not connected. Maybe those parts are feeling just lonely or sad or a million different things. And then trying to work with those parts is what I would do if I were you.
Oh, thank you. I think that's the thing is being mindful of what my body needs. And it's so hard when you're so distracted by all these external things to be mindful in the moment. And I don't know, I love that we're having this conversation because I get so caught up in it that I don't realize it until, someone brings it up. And honestly, go dad. Very rarely does he say the right thing, but he said the right thing this morning. But I also get caught up in kind of like this diet culture, right? So if I see a new trend online of what we should be eating and what's really good, I start to just change and question why I'm eating and what I'm eating. And it feels so difficult. But that's the thing, back to what I was saying before, focusing on all these trends is so hard because then we're kind of taught to just chase what everyone else is doing. And a diet trend might be so great for someone else. But like you said, it's individualized. It's what's right for you.
Yeah, totally. I think what I'm hearing is when you go online and you're already in a vulnerable position, then you're impacted by the videos you see. You're impacted by the information. And often we are opening our Instagram app or our TikTok when we're feeling an emotion. We're feeling bored, which is an emotion. We're feeling lonely. We're feeling understimulated. We're feeling something. And we go to open that. And then we hear all this unsolicited advice. You didn't ask what people thought about what you're eating. You didn't ask what people thought of your hair trend, but you're going to see it. You're going to see a bazillion people's thoughts on those things. And it is hard to continue to swim upstream. This is how I feel as an anti-diet therapist who really focuses on helping people connect back with who they are and focus less on the noise outside. I am swimming upstream. I feel like I am in a boat all alone with my other friends who are anti-diet as well. And we are just batting away the trends. We're just like, no, not that. No, not that. And I do think the conversation has changed. In the last, 5 years, the landscape has changed. I think 5 years ago, it was so trendy to be body positive. It was so trendy to be accepting your body. And now there's been a change in the conversation. I feel like we're back in the 2000s.
Yeah.
Thinness is in, and people are talking about it. And I don't have X, but I've heard that there's a lot of pro Anna content on there. And this is coming back around. And it's really incredibly scary. And I think it comes from a place of uncertainty, insecurity. People start leaning, when we feel, like you said, out of control, we start leaning back into this kind of old and tired trope of making ourselves smaller, making our emotions smaller, making ourselves sick. And it's really scary.
It is. It's really scary to see how we're reverting because I remember feeling so excited that conversations were changing and it wasn't making me feel insecure and it wasn't making my friends feel insecure. And then all of a sudden, a lot of body positivity started to go away. But I think also this conversation online, people will comment on someone and be like, oh, you need to start Ozempic. And that's how do you say that to someone? I just,
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like getting into the GLP ones is definitely a big topic. We can talk about it, but I feel like, Ozempic is a GLP-1 just for people who don't know. It is a medication that is so helpful for people with diabetes and has been researched extensively in the diabetes community. It has recently been used for weight loss, as we know, and the way that these GLP-1s are being used is that they're being titrated at much higher levels than they ever have before. So it really is a newer way to use the GLP-1s. And I think there's a few parts that are scary for me. I think there are some side effects to titrating these drugs at a higher amount than we previously were, and we just don't have the research on it, right? I think if someone said, like, I developed a brand new thing, why don't, like, no one's ever used it before, put it in your hair, you probably wouldn't do it, right? But I think because there's such a strong desire for people to solve the problem of their bodies, they don't care. That it really scares me that people would rather risk side effects, hardships than live in a larger body. Living in a larger body is so scary to people that they would rather take this unknown, drastic, potentially dangerous approach. And I truly believe in body autonomy. You have a right to do whatever you want with your body. If you want to use that hair product that's never been tested, please use it. But I think there's not a conversation happening around what are the risks? What are the side effects? What do we know about this drug? And what are you risking by making this choice? And I think the other piece is that now that there is this option for treating being in a larger body, fat bodies are being blamed for their own fatness. You are now stupid or silly for not taking this medication. There's a judgment around people who are comfortable and happy in their bodies and healthy. They are being judged and shamed for not taking this step. And I think that blame for people in larger bodies is so misguided and misunderstood. And it is just not the conceptualization that I was hoping for in 2024, 2025 life, that we are here where people are being blamed for their bodies.
and like you said, there's this expectation that you should be doing it. And first of all, it's not even like it's a financially super cheap thing to do. So that's a very important piece. But also, just to assume you know what someone should do for their body and what they should look like, again, is not, we need to stop commenting on what everyone looks like and what everyone's doing and recognize that, like you said, health looks and feels different for every single person. And who are we to say what is healthy or appropriate for someone else instead of it's about feeling confident in yourself. And honestly, if you felt confident in yourself fully, you wouldn't be commenting on everyone else online. It's others' insecurities coming out. And maybe we need to shift conversations more toward self-love and focusing on your physical, mental, emotional, spiritual health, all these aspects that make you you instead of what you look like.
Yeah, totally. And I think the people who are taking GLP-1s, I don't even blame them. I really feel for them because existing in this world in a larger body is really hard. This isn't a world that makes space for people in larger bodies. People aren't asking someone in a larger body, how do you feel? They're just immediately prescribing weight loss to any ailment they might have. And it is exhausting to fight this current all the time. I go to a restaurant, there's maybe not a chair that I can fit in. That's not fair, right? That is not a world that's making space for my body or people in even larger bodies than me. And I think that's really exhausting. So I totally understand that people are being literally beaten down by diet culture constantly for decades. It makes sense that when this magical solution comes up, they're going to try it. And there's never been a medication that has supported long-term weight loss in a healthy way. Every other medication that has been used for weight loss, we have learned has caused other medical issues or created dynamics that were really harmful. There has never been something like this before.
Yeah.
Why would this be different? I have to ask myself that question. Why would this be different?
It's not fair to expect someone to change their body size to fit into what society has deemed normal. I mean, it's just, I know society has this idea that they want everyone to like be their best self. Like, I totally get that, but someone's best self is nothing to do with their body. It has to do with how they feel and who they are in the world. And it's just, I don't know, I see it with myself, how easy it is for me to just revert back to not wanting to eat, how unhealthy that is. And yet that's something that people would compliment. How did you get to that point where you were able to just reject diet culture?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, I realize we've been chatting all this time. I didn't even say how I'm connected to this topic. But I developed an eating disorder in college. I actually started hating my body in fifth grade. So I had been primed for it for a long time. I started puberty when I was in fifth grade. I got my period and I was just so different from everyone around me. And I felt so wrong. And I was just like, what's wrong with my body? And I didn't even have the internet then, so I don't know how I found out that you could restrict your food. But even then, I have my journals from fifth grade, and I look back, and I bet you have that too, because I know you've posted about that a little bit. And I really hated myself. I hated my body. I wanted to change it. I wanted to fit in. I wanted to be valuable. And I thought that was the way to get value. So I struggled with it for a long time, definitely disordered eating all throughout high school. And then in college, I really dove deep into my eating disorder. And I think that's a lot of people's experience because at college, you really have so much of your own time and autonomy. Like at home, someone's cooking dinner for you. In college, it's pretty easy to just not go to the dining hall and not go to breakfast. And it just became an environment that really allowed my eating disorder to thrive, right? That part of me was there, but college became this breeding ground for it to just thrive. And there's tons of other nuances there, but it's hard for me to say the one exact thing that got me here. I think it's a combination of working with an intuitive eating counselor and dietitian. I am actually a certified intuitive eating counselor, and it's one of the ways that I really think people can work on their relationship with food that I love. I love intuitive eating. I think it's the best way to work on your relationship with food. It gets a bad rap generally because people don't understand it and they think it means just eat everything and eat anything. And that's really not what it is. If you're curious about it, you can go on the intuitive eating website and read the 10 principles. And it's funny, you just said one of the principles. I don't know if you know this, but the first principle is reject the diet mentality. That's literally the first principle of intuitive eating. So I really worked consistently with intuitive eating counselors. My first dietitian was an intuitive eating counselor, and she helped me work through these principles and learn about my relationship with food and what it was doing for me and how I could enjoy food and have satisfaction with food and also take care of my nutritional needs. So I think there's so many factors in that. I have a very strong relationship with yoga and kind of meditative practices. I think that's played a big role. But really, I'd say the best thing is working with dietitians and therapists that get it. That to me was like the best thing. Right now, what is the most supportive to me is being in community. And I'm so, so lucky that all of my colleagues are anti-diet and take a very similar approach to me. And I'm able to be around people who are not trying to change their bodies. I think in recovery and what you're describing is that, when you go online, you're not seeing a sea of people who are comfortable with their bodies. I'm really lucky to be in a group of people who are actually just trying to be human and live and be messy and take up space. I'm really, really lucky to have that community.
Your community really can be what makes you feel secure and loved and safe, or it can be something that makes you feel insecure and not good enough. So being able to find people who just love you and love themselves is incredible. I know you have a recovery supper group. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, definitely. So I started this group because one of my clients was feeling so isolated in her recovery. She was with family members or friends, and they'd be, making negative comments that they didn't even realize were harming her, right? Comments like, oh, I feel so full after a meal, or oh, I have to go to the gym tomorrow because I ate this, or whatever comments people make around food and bodies. And she really missed the community she had when she was in treatment. When you're in treatment, you're in groups with people who are all trying to focus on not changing their bodies and not being obsessive about their bodies. And she really missed that. So we were chatting, and I was like, let's start a group. We live in New York City. Let's go. Why not? What's the worst that happened? It's me and you having dinner. So I brought on a intuitive eating dietitian who's also anti-diet, Chelsea Levy, who joined us, and she's such a great co-host with me. And we basically just posted online, and we're like, we're having a dinner. It's a diet-free dinner, so you have to be comfortable, ordering and eating like a full meal, a recovered meal. And you have to commit to not talking about wanting to change your body or feeling negatively about what you've eaten or your body. And that's basically the whole premise. So, one of our inspirations was like AA, right? People who go to AA can go to 10 meetings a day in person. There's nothing for eating disorders. There's literally no way to build community with your eating disorder recovered friends. So, we are really hoping to build it. The first one, we had 2 people, then we had 4 people, then we had 7 people. The next one, we had 10 people. So we're really growing, and I just don't think people know about it super well. So I'm excited to share about it and continue sharing about it. And it's just a fun night. It's not a meal support. It's truly just fun. We're talking about TV shows. We're talking about Broadway shows. We're talking about our hairstyles. We're talking about what we do for work. It's such a mixture, and I think it just provided such a relief to people who don't have a space to be where there's not constant diet talk, because it's everywhere. It's online, it's in our friend groups, it's in our family groups. We need this outlet, this space where we don't have to be in that and be swimming upstream constantly.
That is so refreshing because honestly, listening to you say that all the time, my meals have some kind of comment about it. What do you think the calories are on this? And I feel like it's just so prominent in my meals with family or friends. And I love the idea of just not being allowed to talk about it. That's not what we're here for. We're here to have fun and talk about things we actually enjoy and feel comfortable eating. Oh, that is so amazing. So if people want to learn more about this and about you, how can they find you?
Yeah, so you can find me on social media. Unfortunately, I know we talked about that today. My handle is Thrope Therapy LCSW. And then I also have a website, thropetherapy.com. And if you want to email me, my email is lily@thropetherapy.com. And I'm sure we'll link those all in the show notes. But one thing I want to say quickly about when people do make these food comments, I think it's a bid for connection. I think a lot of women specifically have connected over this dieting, right? Just being able to say, like, oh, maybe you should do this. And then the other person's like, oh, yeah, well, I've been on this one and da da da. I do think it's a bid for connection. So I challenge you next time someone makes those comments to recognize that I think they want to feel connected to you. So, what are ways that you can feel or help them feel more connected to you? Because I think it is a bid for connection. So, I try to frame those moments as hurtful, but also like this person clearly wants to connect. And that's the way that they know how to connect with other people. And I want to teach them how to connect deeper. I want to ask, really, how are they doing? I want to ask something deeper so that we really can connect.
I love that reframe. Okay, I'm making that note because it is, I think, a lot about connection. You're absolutely right. You brought me so many revelations and tips today. I really appreciate you in this conversation because it's so needed and it was so needed for me. So thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to Normalize the Conversation. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. This podcast is an initiative of Inspiring My Generation, focusing on normalizing the conversation, bringing education and awareness to the forefront, and amplifying global voices to spark change and hope. Inspiring My Generation is a 501c3 nonprofit organization on a mission towards suicide prevention through awareness, conversation, education, and support. Connect with us on Instagram at Inspiring My Generation and visit our website inspiringmygeneration.org to learn more about our work and how you can make a difference.